he said, John, we're going to do the job, but my fear is that literally every hour we wait, there's a chance that not only one, my hole could collapse, two, the road could collapse on the side of a highway basically, or three, this pipe is hanging on by a thread that if 5 hours or 12 hours, the pipe could be gone. So he basically asked us, is there any way you can do this right now? Welcome to the Royal Flush Podcast. My name is John Overy. I am the VP of Sales here at Royal Flush. In this podcast, you can expect us to cover the ins and outs of our ever-growing state-of-the-art pipelining company. Additionally, we're going to bring in local guests from the Rhode Island area to cover the 3 I's. We want interesting people that have interesting stories that ideally spark an interesting conversation. In this internal episode, we cover a few projects that we recently completed, one for a fast food chain and one for a very prominent landmark here in Providence, Rhode Island. So have a listen. I think you'll enjoy it. Subscribe. Stay tuned. I'm going to introduce a man very special to me, my brother-in-law, and our partner basically here at Royal Flush. This is Marc Watson. Marc, welcome to the Royal Flush Podcast.
I appreciate it. It took a while to get me on here.
It did take a while to get on here. So Marc will be making a lot more standard weekly appearances with me to focus on, as we said in our opening, the ins and outs of us at Royal Flush, talking about our really cool technology, what we do, and kind of our plans and vision for the future. So what I want to cover today, Marc, is to go over from the infancy to the completion of a job in a couple phases that we did over the last couple of months at the Biltmore Hotel in the Biltmore parking garage in Providence, Rhode Island.
Gotcha. Yep.
So anybody local to Rhode Island or southern New England or certainly Providence has probably seen the Biltmore Hotel, the sign. If you've ever been to a sporting event at the Dunk, which is now the AMP, it'll always be the Dunk, by the way.
Always be the Dunk.
Or the convention center, you certainly might have parked at the Biltmore parking garage.
Right.
And so we had the opportunity to get connected with the gentleman, Todd, who's in charge of the maintenance and supervision of this garage. Mm-hmm. And so kind of take me from the infancy, the first part in phase one, give me a big picture down to a deep dive of what this first part of this dig up was and the pipes and the issues with this parking garage at the Biltmore.
Gotcha. All right, so Todd had called us out and asked us to camera some lines because he had a couple drains that he wasn't sure where they were going. Mm-hmm. In big picture, they wanted to do this weird construction project in the cylinder of that parking garage where you lap around. They wanted to add a condo in there. I thought it was nuts from the beginning. But so we cameraed some lines out there. We identified that there was 2 separate kinds of drains in that parking garage. One was going into an oil-water separator, and the other one was going to sewer. Mm-hmm. So we had to then, in the next phase, was dive in and actually bypass that oil-water separator because it was no longer needed by code in Providence. Mm-hmm. And we reconnected those lines together.
So let me stop you. Let's do like some terms in 101 for people who don't know. So how many stories is the parking garage?
So it's a 4-story parking garage.
Okay. And then when we talk about the pipes in these, there's what we call roof drains, which are connecting the water and the rainwater from the top floor, mostly the top floor,
only the
that's
top
obviously
floor,
flat,
yeah.
And that's taking the water down these big pipes in the garage, under the ground, into the underground. Why can't I think of the term?
Into the stormwater system.
The stormwater system, and taking it out to the street, right? So that's kind of one. And then additionally, on the ground floor of the parking garage, there's a couple of kind of businesses and certainly some toilets,
right,
that are taking the sewer water and the gray water under the ground out to the connection in the street.
Right. So they had this oil-water separator in there.
Yeah,
which
so
I
what
think
is
I think
that
that was
for?
from like the 80s. So what they used to do is basically it'd almost act like a grease trap. So
Okay.
water would have to fill up to a certain level, and then the clean water would drain into the sewer system, and the oil would stay inside of this tank.
Now, is this because it was a parking garage?
Because it was a parking garage.
So not necessarily oil or grease from like a restaurant where you've got vehicles parked,
right.
naturally drip oil or grease, and the rainwater that could collect in there could go onto the concrete, then in return be put into this system,
right,
and put into ground. So
and
they
that
wanted to
system was
separate
only
those.
picking up, we'll say, floor 3 through 1.
Okay.
So the roof went into its own system, and then this oil-water separator system was for every other floor.
Okay, so something that probably maybe at the time made sense, but today is a kind of a little bit of an archaic and not necessarily a need, right?
I guess they found that it's kind of completely unnecessary. Mm-hmm. So phase 1 for that project, we identified these 2 lines. We wanted to remove the oil-water separator. So we worked really closely with Dislaney's construction on that project. It was quite the depth for digging, and then it was awful backfill. It was in there was tile, there was brick, everything like that. So working with them, we repiped the front phase to tie the 2 lines together only in the front before they exited the building. Mm-hmm. The rest of the stuff, we didn't feel that there was any need to disrupt the rest of the parking garage for that.
Okay. And then tell me about, so what type of pipes were these?
So these were old cast iron lines. They were 8-inch. So, there were, a lot of them had like some rot in them and some holes. And that last section in particular was really bad. So that's why we decided we're just going to rip them up and combine the two systems together.
Gotcha.
All approvals from the city, making sure everything worked. Big picture, Todd wanted all this done for the fact that maybe they would add this condo in this property.
Yeah.
The next phase was, because we had done all this other camera work, we identified that a lot of these underground cast iron lines, the 4 and 6 inch runs, were in pretty rough shape. And I'd explained to him, listen, if you're going to be adding condos or parking food trucks and having connections for those guys and all that kind of stuff, which future development plans that he had like poked ideas at, I said, let's make sure all these pipes are all set before you move forward. So then phase 2 for us was we dug a baby access pit underneath, an area of the parking garage. We descaled and hydrojetted and then relined and did some reinstatements for them there. This way here, for whatever future project they have, those pipes are all set.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I love that we do. I think sometimes people might not understand it, but we want to offer the customer a comprehensive solution, right? And so we try to eliminate ourselves from being what I call the hit and run contractor. We're not interested in just doing the one job. We're going to dig up and fix that.
Right.
We had a conversation with Todd. So, okay, you think you want to build this, you think you want to do A, B, and C for potential growth. Let's offer you a comprehensive solution. What we want to avoid is us doing the project for this little dig up. But then 2 years from now, you say, hey, John and Mark, I'm actually going to move forward with those plans I told you about, and we're going to tie into a pipe that is not performing the way we did. Right? And there's a chance, not that it would be our fault, but there's a chance for that customer to say, well, hey, how come we didn't think about doing that previously? So we always try to, in essence, oversell or over-communicate all phases of the job to give that customer a comprehensive solution. So when he's ready to move forward 3 years from now, he's good to go.
Yeah. So I always like to do that, and I also like to explain to people, a line you'll hear me say a lot is I like to sleep at night. So like if I see something that could potentially be an issue, I like to bring it to people's attention and be like, hey, before you move forward with that, we should really consider this one. The last thing you want to do is paint the car before you get all the rust off of it, right? So you want to make sure that when you're doing a project, you're covering all your bases as well, for not only for me, but for the customer, most importantly, like, hey, before you decide you're going to add food trucks in the back and then it floods the parking garage, let's make sure the lines are good. And that was the main point of doing that second part of that relining project for him.
Gotcha. Okay. And then was there anything, I don't think the project was too unique, but give me some more specifics. I think it was almost 200 feet, and it was, 8-inch cast iron, and we did a pit. So tell me a little about, like, the actual job that day. I know we broke it up into 2 different days. Tell me kind of the intricacies of the job.
Day 1 was identifying the proper spot to dig and locate, and from that point there, we were able to remove a section of pipe of the 8-inch. That line actually went there from 8 to 6 and then reduced again to 4. So at that access pit we dug, we actually lucked out and it went to 6-inch at that point there. So now we had, because our liners can only typically handle one transition, so 4 to 6 or 6 to 8. It could never go from 8 to 4. You'd end up with a paper thin liner. So from there we were able to descale and jet and remove whatever scale was in that line, and then we were able to shoot the 2 shots. But yeah, it was almost 200 feet in total length. And we had a couple reinstates. I believe we were at 3 or 4 in that job. But overall, that was the main trunk line for the building. So we didn't address the branch lines. The branch lines we figured they're actually in pretty good shape. And we decided that if he ran into issues, we could address each one of those individually as it happened.
Yeah, so we like to use the analogy of the highway, right? So what we addressed is Route 95.
Yes.
We didn't address the off-ramps.
Right.
If you do it on a scale, certainly we could, but we basically took care of 98% of any problem that's going to happen.
Right.
And at that point, being honest and transparent with the customer, we could certainly address those other lines, but they really don't need to be addressed now.
Exactly.
That's something down the line that would be a much smaller scale of a project.
Right.
And something that could be done here. So
again, part of that parking garage had been converting it to commercial space.
Yep.
So realistically, seeing how they do things, having that main trunk line is great, all done. And then if they decide to add commercial space to another spot and take over a parking garage area, that's the time that you address that off-ramp or that transitional section of line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've certainly done it in the past, but this is one of the projects that I was excited that we did full start to finish royal flush in our vertical integration. And so let me tell you, I know what you mean, but let me tell the listeners what we mean, and then you can tell me how excited you were to do that. So at the end of last year, we had purchased a mini excavator because we really wanted to start controlling our projects a lot more and dig any access pits that we needed that we felt comfortable with. And so we did that in this project. We saw cut the asphalt and concrete, and we just bought a new saw cutter for that.
Yep.
And then in return, one of the other little tools that we added to our arsenal is a dump trailer, and we also asphalt patched.
Right.
And so what we try to do is be as comprehensive with that contractor or that customer as possible, so we can be a one-stop shop.
Right.
And so not only did we cut the asphalt, dig the hole, clean the pipe, line the job, fill the hole back in, but patch the asphalt.
Right.
And this is a service that we're trying to offer a lot of customers. So tell me how excited you are about doing all those.
Well, so I like seeing the whole project done, and we talk about control. It's one of our favorite words here. But like when you're more in control of what you're doing in that project, and you're giving that customer every inch of that project all done, it makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
Because before we got into the asphalt patching with the demo saw and all that kind of good stuff, it was, hey, we can pack it with gravel, and then now you're gonna have to call somebody on your own as a customer to get in there to patch it. And I don't know about you, but I know a lot of asphalt guys, A, they're hard to get a hold of, but B, they don't want to come out for a 4x4 patch.
Yep.
And so rather than offering that half job, let's just get the whole thing done.
Yeah.
We're offering the customers probably a better pricing anyway, because we're just getting it by the ton and just getting it done because we're there. But also the job is done. So when we leave there, they have nothing left to worry about. It takes all the stress off of them for micromanaging other contractors. Like if we're held up a day, is that guy held up a day? So now everything is literally just wrapped up and done and ready to roll the second we drive our trucks out of there.
Yeah, I think it's another major differentiating point for us where we know we're better than anybody else in this industry.
Right.
We know that our service is top notch. We know that our guys are skilled and we have the best people. But now we can also offer these other small things that go part of our job so we can truly be the sole source. And we also know that we're not the cheapest. And we're proud of that. We do not want to be the cheapest. We have the most high-tech, expensive equipment in the industry.
Right.
We know and like to think we pay and compensate our guys and our people very, very well. They deserve it. They work really hard.
Of course they do, yeah.
And so I'm really confident. I know in what we do, it's not all about price. And so if somebody else is going to come in that might be a little bit cheaper than us, we'd like to think that doesn't matter because we are truly offering that comprehensive service.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if they had to go ahead and hire somebody else to dig it, hire somebody else to fill it in, hire somebody else to asphalt it, that could have taken the project from 2 days to 2 weeks. Number one, we know disruption and downtime is almost the most important factor in what we do.
Right.
But also, that could actually increase the cost past what we are.
Right.
And so when you put those together and you put on a nice little bow to the contractor, it makes perfect sense to use us at all
And
times.
a lot of people just don't want to have to deal with that. That's a whole other phone call they have to make. Like, these people are already busy enough. Like, Todd's busy enough, that guy. We barely saw him on the project, which I told him there's nothing for you to really worry about.
Yeah.
I'll call you when it's done. If there's any hiccups at all, I'll deal with it, then call you and make sure everything's all set.
Yeah.
But again, like that whole, we call it control, and we use it a lot every day. That's a reason why we bought the mini excavator. So we were more in control of our job and doing the job we need to do in our timeline. So worked out really well.
And so, Mark, I also want to transition to another project that we just completed Monday, I think.
Tuesday.
Yeah, just the other day, and with another contractor that we have done work with in the past for a Burger King in a very unique situation, kind of on an emergency basis. So start us at step one on how the call came in and what the issue was with this Burger King fast food restaurant and the course of events that led up to this job.
Right. So Monday we were on another project in Lincoln. We were doing a manhole rehab there, and Sherry Construction gave us a call. They were working for this Burger King. They were having tons of drainage issues, and he wanted us to go out there and camera the main to find out what was causing the problems and how to solve it. Upon arriving on scene, we found some asbestos pipe at the curb line. There was a small section of Orangeburg that I had assumed was left in there from another construction project. They left like a small 5-foot piece before that went to the asbestos concrete. The real unique thing about that job is it was a 6-inch line in asbestos concrete that went underneath Route 1. So Route 1 in Attleboro is a very busy highway. It's
basically a highway.
It is, yeah. So it's a 4-lane road, a lot of big commercial properties on there. And it tied again into another asbestos concrete 10-inch main for the city sewer that ran on the opposite side of the road. That particular pipe, their lateral, we'll call it, literally was broken at the connection. There was a gaping hole. There was rocks coming in and everything. So he was like, what do we do? How do we fix it? When can we fix it? So we needed to have a hydro excavation company out there to make that trench safe for us to work in. And because some of the road was starting to cave in with the excavator, a lot of vibration off of that. So we had said, let's reconvene Tuesday. The whole plan was we had priced it out to do the job accordingly and then he wanted us to get there fast to keep this Burger King up and running as quick as possible.
Yeah.
They had been threatened by the town or the state to be shut down because.
Well, yeah. So go back. The information we got was that the Burger King was shut down.
Right.
Due to by the health company because their bathrooms were so improperly or not working at all that basically there was no facilities there.
Yeah. So from what I remember, like literally. There was no bathrooms on it.
There was no bathrooms.
There was no bathrooms.
And as we know, we've done a lot of work in the fast food industry, specifically with McDonald's, one of the biggest competitors. So we knew what this fast food space is like, and we also know in dealing with some of these owners and operators the importance of not being down and not being disrupted for business.
Oh yeah.
You got to think they are in the business of selling cheap hamburgers quickly and in a lot of quantity. So if they're down, if their business is closed for 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week, that is thousands and thousands of dollars of revenue completely lost.
Right. And the thing is that they were operating with no inside being used, so drive-through only. Yep. So I'm sure that was already impacting them. But at the same time, they were, they should have had bathrooms for their staff. They should, they probably should have porta johns or whatever it may be. So anyway, so on that Monday, Mike from Sherry Construction had said, okay, we'll reconvene Tuesday. Let's get a hydro excavator out here and let's take a second look again with the camera to make sure we can do this.
Yep.
So Tuesday we sent our guys out there. As soon as they had the hydro excavation team on site, they put the camera down there. We decided, hey, we think we can do this and we think we could do it today. So we jumped on it. We actually pulled off of another project to facilitate this for him because we knew they were in such dire needs, as well as understanding that Burger King is that business that's in business to make money.
What was their biggest concern? Why did they want it? So I think we gave them an offer to just do it the next morning.
Right.
Why did they not? Why was Mike our contact as a general contractor perspective? Why was he so concerned to do it right then and there?
So the top of that asbestos line at our access, at our trench, there was no top on it. It was literally held up by whatever gravel was around. And on the further side, at their lateral connection to that main, that pipe was literally ready to fall off.
It was holding on by a thread.
By a thread of asbestos, basically.
Yeah, and so what Mike explained to me, he said, John, we're going to do the job. He goes, but my fear is that literally every hour we wait, there's a chance that not only one, my hole could collapse, two, the road could collapse on the side of a highway, basically, or three, this pipe is hanging on by a thread that if 5 hours or 12 hours, the pipe could be gone.
Right.
So he basically asked us, is there any way you can do this right now?
Right.
And so we made things happen. Of course, we negotiated a price and we priced it accordingly, and we jumped on it right away. And so then take me into the logistics of the project. Is basically 2 o'clock. I think you guys arrived.
Yep.
And so take me through the footage, again, the size of the pipe. What was the project?
So 2 o'clock, we met on scene. Chris and Eric had grabbed all their equipment, got that set up while I was pulling my guys off of another job. We sent the camera down there, got our final inspection size. Now, we shot MaxLiner 4D, which we know has got that stretch factor. It's got a drawback factor when it goes to a bigger pipe size. So once we got our sizes that I had deemed appropriate, and we shot that liner down there, we cooked it. So, we cooked it, got it done roughly in about an hour, the original liner. And then when we put the camera back down, we noticed we fell about 4 inches short. Mm-hmm. So you never want to come up short in anything in life, and especially not in this case where the whole point of the job was to make sure this pipe did not fall off. Mm-hmm. So my guys, because we always say they're the best, we ended up basically gluing, we did like a remote start for a UV patch at the end of that line so that it landed dead on the main. Mm-hmm. And we shot that. And that only took about 10 or 15 minutes to cure because it was such a small section of pipe.
Yep.
But now this way here, we know that pipe is lined from our access pit to the main, seamless. You know what I mean? No issues are going to occur in that pipe. And this way here for that customer, the more important part is they have nothing to worry about now underneath Route 1.
Yep.
Now, one of the best things that I got off of that whole job was the town guys are out there. And we know how some of those guys are from sewer departments and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, man, we've worked with you before. This is great, this process is awesome. And he's like, but now I need you to look at the 10-inch main. Because, again, it's asbestos concrete. Mm-hmm. So he was all riled up and fired up. Because a lot of these guys, they know about us, and until you work with us, you don't fully get it.
Yep.
And a lot of those guys get so immersed in the job that when they're seeing it all happen, they're like, this is what I got to do.
Yeah.
I need these guys now.
What we do is so visual. And so we always say 99% of people don't know what we do. 99% of people in a trade, a service, a DPW in construction still don't even know what we do. And if the term usually is, oh yeah, I think I've seen a video, I think I've heard a little bit about it, and we can verbally explain it to them all the time. But if you have anybody who is any sort of construction-minded person, and they see what we do on site, they go, oh, I get it now.
Right.
And they're hooked.
Right.
And they literally say, I can think of 10 different things that this would have solved for me in the past, or I know I've got another problem coming up that I want you to look at.
Right.
So it's funny because you can't actually see anything because it's all underground, but it's so visual. When they see the equipment and they see the pipe inverting and they see us curing it, they're like, holy crap, I get what you're doing now.
Yeah. And I mean, we roll up on site. I mean, our truck's always branded and large and in charge, but, we show up to a job like that, there's 120 feet of rig on that job. Mm-hmm. And every piece of equipment is like, wow. Like, from the speedy light, just because it looks so sophisticated and so technical. You got the Dan cutter in there, you got the jetters running, you got everything moving. It's not just like when you pull up to a job site and you see an excavator and you see a bobcat. We all know kids love that stuff.
Yep.
But when you start seeing this sophisticated computer screens being opened up and things being dialed in and temperatures being watched and all that kind of stuff, that's where really everyone's like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I wish sometimes those kind of jobs happen at night, because seeing that blue light come out of the pipe, that's just like the aha moment for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But in that particular case, like, I couldn't have been any more thrilled with how it all went down. We hit the mark for the customer, got it done in a timely fashion, and again, my guys are the best. So like when we're out there, we know what our job is to do for that day. We have to hit that mark, so we do everything in our power to make sure we get there.
Yeah, yeah. Joe and I had a meeting with a customer the other day, and the customer looked at me and said, oh, John, so you're a plumber? And I laughed because we know I'm not a plumber. But I said, no, I'm not a plumber, and we're not plumbers either. And he looked at me and kind of was like, what are you talking about? I go, we're not plumbers.
Right.
And I said, well, let me tell you why. And that's the exact, we've joked about in the past. There's great plumbers out there. It's a great trade. We love it. You and your dad did it for a long time. But the way that we show up to a project, the equipment we have and the tools that we have could not be any further from a plumber.
Right.
It is apples and dump trucks.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about equipment from NASA versus stuff you buy at Home Depot. It is so totally different. And that's the wow factor I love from a lot of people who are either maybe a little questionative or not sure how it works, or like, what is this technology? How's it going to work? And then they show us pull up and they're like, holy crap, man, I get what's going on here.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because you'll show up to a residential job and you're sitting there with $250,000 to $500,000 worth of equipment on a job. Mm-hmm. But that's the way we do it, and that's how we do it. You know what I mean? And it probably, to my biggest fault, is I'm the guy that's going to spend the most and get the best piece of equipment out there, because I want my guys to have an easier job, but I also want the best result for the customer. Mm-hmm. So like, the UV system was a no-brainer when we jumped into it, and the robotic cutters are a no-brainer because you need it for work. But literally, I always tell my guys all the time, keep your ear to the ground, because the second you hear something new coming out or anything better, we're going to jump on it. Yeah. And you want to be able to offer that solution for people that's not digging up a road and underneath an electrical duct bank and all. You want to be able to offer them the best solution for the best price as well.
Yeah. So we were when we presented that proposal to Burger King, again, it was an expensive job, but we were joking internally, like, I think if our technology didn't exist, or a service like ours didn't, I don't think they had an option to dig it up. I think the city, the state, or town would have said, close your restaurant. You can't close a 4-lane highway.
Right. And if they did allow them to dig, it would have been a strategic nightmare. So not only it was a 4-lane highway, you got asbestos concrete pipe, so that's an abatement project in itself. You also there was a electrical bank running in the road, a Verizon electrical bank, and then you have stormwater lines also running in that line. And I'm sure there was water and gas in that road as well.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So you're talking about all those logistics go into that project. How many people you have to involve?
Yeah.
It was tough enough getting a detail officer and some signs and cones out there,
yeah,
just because we're working in the sidewalk.
Yeah, literally on the edge of the highway.
So we're in the parking lot working in the sidewalk, but still, like, just you had to have the detail officer for that. So now imagine you have to have National Grid. You have to have whatever the gas company is, Columbus Gas over there.
Yep.
You have to have the town of Attleboro on standby just in case for the water. If somebody hits it, you got to make a repair. Yep. Like, there's so much involved in that. And then on the back end, even if you hook everything up and everything goes seamless on the way in, you still have to now worry about backfill, flowable fill, make sure that road's going to have perfect compaction. Mm-hmm. Then you've got to asphalt. And some of these areas have moratoriums on new sections of asphalt where you can't actually open that asphalt. Yeah. For a certain time period, or you have to go 30 feet left, 30 feet right, and then curb to curb. So now that's all those extra factors involved.
Yeah. If that job was to be dug up, in my opinion, it would have taken a minimum of 1 month, and I'm not joking, $500,000.
1 month based on the way our construction crews work around here in Rhode Island and Mass. Yeah.
1 month and $500,000.
Probably, all day long.
And we basically fixed the problem in 6 hours.
And that's with everything going according to plan.
Yep.
You know, and we all know how that goes. These companies, they'll put 3 guys on that project for the month and call it a day. You know, but you know, the town of Attleboro, that guy couldn't have been any happier. He's like, we've dealt with this problem 1,000 times, and this seems to be the solution for this section of road.
Yeah.
Everything under that road is asphalt. So for us, Joe, if you're paying attention to this podcast, just hit up Route 1 in Attleboro and just head out there. So
Yeah, so when you talk about value and service, again, I can solve a problem potentially in 6 hours versus 1 month for $500,000.
right,
It's really a no-brainer.
yeah.
All right, so let's wrap this episode up here. If you like this episode, Mark and I are going to be sitting down once a week talking about things just like this. We're going to talk about our process. We're going to talk about projects. We're going to be talking about things that are coming up, things that we've done, ideas, services, all things like this that go on in the inner workings with us here at Royal Flush. So stay tuned. Check out more of our podcasts, like and subscribe. Thanks for listening.